Russian armies attacked Ukraine on February 25, 2022, from all directions. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, warned everyone that there would be dire repercussions if anybody attempted to intervene in this situation. Numerous Ukrainian cities witnessed Russian fighter planes and helicopters flying low over them, occasionally launching missiles. And Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, was Putin's primary objective among them. Amidst this unanticipated assault that claimed the lives of several hundred individuals simultaneously, millions of Ukrainians were compelled to flee their homes. Few thought metro stations were safe places to hide, and many individuals sought refuge in basements in order to save their lives. Abruptly, the sounds of explosions and emergency sirens echoed through every part of Ukraine. For the first time since World War II, Europe was seeing a conflict of this magnitude. Vladimir Putin now wants to redraw the map of Europe, which has been created by the political coalition for the last 70 years, in accordance with his intentions. And that also relies on the power of the armed forces. However, why? Why is Russia afraid of a little Ukraine, although it is 27 times larger than Ukraine? What makes the president of Russia interested in Ukraine? And what will he lose if he doesn't accomplish that? Greetings from the Zane TV videos once more. It is crucial to comprehend a few historical occurrences in order to grasp this topic clearly and concisely. A century or so ago, Ukraine was a part of Russia. When the Romanov dynasty ruled this region for several centuries, people in the early 1900s were tired of their Russian Tsar. When their patience eventually ran out, the Russian Revolution of 1917 toppled the Russian Empire's crown and the Romanov dynasty. Now that the people had had enough of this monarch system, it was time to establish a new government. The Russian revolutionaries engaged in internal conflict as they worked to establish this new government, plunging all of Russia into a civil war. The Soviet Union was established in 1922 by 13 separate republics, including Russia and Ukraine, following the conclusion of the Civil War. For example, the USSR, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Only 5 years after gaining independence from the Russian Empire, Ukraine is now a part of the USSR. They compared it to removing a bird from its cage and placing it in another. As time went on, the USSR grew more and more strong every day. The USSR's influence in this region grew greater following World War II.
A portion was distributed to each person based on their needs, while the capitalist systems of the nations that backed the United States existed, wherein every private entity, be it an individual or firm, is free to make as much profit as it desires from its operations. The issue was that America wanted for its system to be applied globally. On the other hand, the Soviet Union desired for communism to take hold globally. These two powers began a Cold War because of their divergent ideologies. While force and weaponry were not utilized in this conflict, the Soviet Union and American powers continued to wage covert political attacks against one another. The severity of the situation forced both powers to fortify their military cooperation even further. The nations that backed America established the North Atlantic Treaty Organizations, NATO, in 1949, in which it was agreed that all NATO members would defend any nation under attack collectively. For the Soviet Union, NATO's establishment posed several risks, since all of the NATO members may jointly attack the Soviet Union if they can defend one another. The Soviet Union formed a similar agreement with itself after seeing the might of NATO. This became known as the Warsaw Pact, despite the fact that these two powers had established alliances to aid one another. Still, the Cold War rages on in secret, because their ideologies differed so greatly, after all. This was the way the Cold War went on for 42 years, whereby both forces sought to undermine one another. Finally, one side started to deteriorate. Republics such as Ukraine decided to break away from the Soviet Union in 1991. Currently, the various USSR member states desired independence. The Soviet Union, which had been created by uniting 15 republics, had split apart into 15 separate, sovereign nations. And as a result, the Warsaw Pact they signed stopped working. Ukraine has at last succeeded in regaining its independence. Now that they were free from the Soviet Union, those nations could make their own choices. Thus, they removed the communist regime that was foisted upon them initially. The world now saw Russia, which had previously been powerful due to the Soviet Union, as a weakling. The Western Powers alliance did not waver even after the Cold War ended. Instead, their authority grew much more. Following their independence from the Soviet Union, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary reversed course and joined NATO in 1999. The trend of joining NATO grew daily, as 7 additional nations joined the organization in 2004. Stated differently, the nations that had previously backed Russia have suddenly joined NATO. This marked the initial instance that Russia's boundaries were in close proximity to NATO. There were now just 3 nations remaining that had not ratified NATO: Georgia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Georgia and Ukraine are 2 of those that have long wished to join NATO. However, Russia could not put up with this. Simultaneously, Russia realized that its access to the Black Sea may be halted at any moment if these 2 nations join NATO. Let us inform you, viewers, that Russia is the 3rd largest producer of gas and oil in the world, behind the United States and Saudi Arabia. It exports its products to the global market via the Black Sea. And for this reason, Russia opposed the membership of Georgia and Ukraine in NATO. Nonetheless, Ukraine persisted in wanting to join NATO. Furthermore, Ukraine declared its intention to join the European Union in 2013. Recall that Petro Poroshenko, who was seen as a close ally of Russia and highly dishonest, was the president of Ukraine at the time. When it came time to officially sign the agreement with the European Union, the Ukrainian president declined to do so in favor of accepting a substantial rescue package from Russia, by declaring that Russia would always have the backing of Ukraine. Saying that Russia bought off the president of Ukraine to keep him from joining the EU would not be incorrect. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Ukraine as soon as this news broke, and insisting that Ukraine join the European Union. The protesters' pressure grew daily, and eventually the president of Ukraine began to crack down on them, whereby almost 100 individuals perished. When the protesters realized this, they turned more violent, and the situation got so bad that the president of Ukraine had to resign from office and depart Russia. For the protesters, the president's flight was a win. Putin was simultaneously viewing it as a defeat. Putin then began to exercise his influence. Initially, the Black Sea spanning peninsula under Ukrainian authority was taken over by the Russian army. Following that, they took control of Donetsk and Luhansk, 2 parts of Ukraine that border Russia, with the aid of separatists. The separatist movement, which called for the split of these 2 areas from Ukraine, benefited considerably from Russian assistance. For the entire 8 years, there was a great deal of bloodshed in each of these areas. It claimed the lives of almost 14,000 individuals. 2 million Ukrainians were compelled to evacuate these areas. In actuality, Putin benefited greatly from Donetsk and Luhansk's secession from Ukraine, and for that reason, Putin gave them a great deal of assistance. The true nature of Putin's objectives emerged in November 2021. The satellite image shows millions of Russian troops being pushed to the Ukrainian border. And a few weeks after that, Putin made his requests known. Putin's primary demand was that this region not be included in NATO's expansion, and return their armed forces to the same range as it was in 1997. In other words, far from the Russian border. The leaders of the West swiftly rejected Putin's proposal and augmented their forces yet further. However, Russian forces continued to encircle Ukraine from all directions and continued to conduct intense military exercises along the border. Putin took office on February 21, 2022, and he recognized the independence of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics. Additionally, Russian troops arrived in these 2 areas to maintain peace. Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, on the other hand, said in a video message to the Russians that a conflict would only result in the death of both nations' populations. Leaders in the West assert that we cannot prevent anyone from joining NATO as Ukraine is an independent nation. Putin officially invaded the entirety of Ukraine 2 days later, on February 24, 2022, under the pretext of a special military operation. President of the European Commission, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and President of the United States Joe Biden denounced this Russian conduct and stated that Putin and Russia will pay for it. Protesters against the war have been spotted worldwide shouting slogans in support of Ukraine. Thousands of demonstrators in Russia itself came out in support of Ukraine. For the first time in its history, NATO's reaction force sprang into action, and the United States dispatched troops to the Eastern European border. The world is standing with Ukraine, but it is not taking concrete action against Russia, because Russia possesses the greatest nuclear weapons stockpile in the world. Furthermore, Putin has already warned to carry out dire consequences for anyone attempting to intervene. The United States and other nations have begun putting sanctions on Russia in place of a physical assault. Russia's economy will suffer greatly as a result, and maybe this will constrain Putin. I hope you have a good understanding of the situation involving Russia and Ukraine. Please leave a comment on this Zane TV special video. We hope to see you in the next amazing video.